For most of 3 decades, Tangier lived under an international government. Start with the map. Tangier stands where Morocco faces Europe across the Strait of Gibraltar, with the Atlantic opening to the west and the Mediterranean stretching east. So ships, diplomats, armies, and rumors all passed a city that seemed to watch 2 worlds at once. This was no miniature city-state carved from empty land, but a zone of roughly 382 square kilometers centered on a living Moroccan port, surrounded on land by Spain's protectorate and connected by sovereignty, memory, religion, and commerce to the rest of Morocco. Tangier had long served as Morocco's diplomatic doorway, especially after Sultan Mohammed bin Abdullah designated it in 1777 as the monarchy's principal point of contact with European commercial interests, drawing consulates, postal systems, and joint foreign projects into its streets. In March 1905, Kaiser Wilhelm II landed at Tangier and challenged France's expanding influence in Morocco, turning the port into the stage for an international crisis that tested Germany, France, Britain, and the fragile idea of Moroccan independence. The crisis ended at Algeciras in 1906, where an international conference formally affirmed Moroccan sovereignty while authorizing deeper European intervention, including a state bank based in Tangier and a police system divided between French and Spanish control. Then came the protectorates. The Treaty of Fez on 30 March 1912 placed most of Morocco under French protection. Spain gained its own northern zone, and Tangier was marked for special treatment because Britain wanted the Strait kept outside any rival's military grip. Paper did not create the zone overnight, because a proposed settlement was stalled by disagreement and then by the First World War, leaving Tangier under an improvised patchwork of Moroccan officials, foreign consuls, special courts, police units, and inherited committees. On 18 December 1923, France, Spain, and Britain signed the Paris Convention, designing Tangier as a neutral zone under joint administration rather than attaching the city outright to one colonial empire. Ratification and translation took time, so the Tangier International Zone formally began on 1 June 1925, turning a diplomatic compromise into a government whose authority would be international in practice but Moroccan in legal form. But sovereignty stayed Moroccan. The Sultan's decree brought the statute into operation. The administrator was formally appointed by the Sultan from the controlling committee's proposal, and the Mendoob represented the Sultan inside the new machinery of rule. Control worked through 5 institutions. A committee of control supervised the system, an administrator handled executive affairs, an appointed legislative assembly made rules, mixed courts exercised international jurisdiction, and the Mendoob retained authority in matters assigned to Morocco's Muslim and Jewish communities. Above the assembly, foreign consuls on the Committee of Control could veto legislation, with no ordinary local appeal, revealing how a city advertised as international cooperation still concentrated decisive power in representatives whom most residents had never chosen. Below that committee, authority remained layered rather than uniform, because international judges, the administrator, the Sultan's representative, foreign legal privileges, and community jurisdiction met inside one territory, making the answer to who rules here depend on what question was being asked. The arrangement promised neutrality and openness. Tangier was to remain free of military forces, while its economic regime removed tariffs on imports, exports, and gold, imposed no exchange controls or income taxes, and allowed unusually broad freedom of establishment. That formula attracted transit trade, currency dealing, businesses, migrants, and cultural traffic. Yet a United States assessment in 1952 also described smuggling and financial dealings thriving beside legitimate commerce, a reminder that regulatory freedom created both opportunity and shadow markets. A 1928 protocol revised the original bargain and cleared the way for the final abolition of older sanitary and municipal bodies, but repeated renegotiation never solved its central contradiction. Tangier remained a Moroccan city whose most powerful public institutions answered to foreign states. Then Europe's war arrived on 14 June 1940, when Spanish troops entered Tangier. On the same day, Paris fell to German forces, abruptly ending the zone's first international period and exposing how little neutrality meant without power to defend it. Spain presented the move as temporary protection against possible German or Italian intervention, but that public explanation sat uneasily beside Spanish nationalist demands for a permanently Spanish Tangier and the speed with which international restraints disappeared. On 3 November 1940, Spain abolished the Committee of Control and Legislative Assembly, and later that month, the territory was effectively folded into the Spanish Protectorate, replacing cumbersome shared authority with wartime domination by a single neighboring power. Britain protested and negotiated guarantees for its rights, while Spain promised not to fortify the zone, a diplomatic compromise that kept Tangier strategically quiet without restoring the international institutions that occupation had erased. By May 1944, Franco's government expelled German diplomats from Tangier, signaling a late wartime adjustment as the Axis position deteriorated, but the city remained under Spanish military occupation until the war in Europe had ended. After victory, an August 1945 conference in Paris prepared the return of international administration, excluding Francoist Spain from the negotiations, while France and Britain arranged a provisional restoration and invited broader post-war participation. On 11 October 1945, Spanish troops withdrew and handed government back to revived international institutions, beginning the zone's second period. The United States then joined the Committee of Control and appointed a judge to the restored international courts. Restoration did not restore political silence, because Tangier's unusual access to foreigners, newspapers, consulates, and international contacts made it a valuable meeting place for Moroccan nationalists seeking allies beyond the boundaries of the French and Spanish protectorates. In April 1947, Sultan Mohammed V traveled to Tangier and delivered major addresses on 9 April at the Mendubia and on 10 April at the Grand Mosque, speaking from a city whose international status gave every word an audience far beyond Morocco. His message joined Moroccan independence with wider Arab connection, appealing openly for national freedom without naming a particular colonial power, and transforming Tangier from an object of European negotiation into a platform for Morocco's own claim to political unity. The setting amplified the argument. Foreign governments had justified the zone as a neutral solution to their rivalry, yet the Sultan could point from within that solution toward a Morocco whose sovereignty should be exercised, not merely preserved as diplomatic language. By 1952, a United States intelligence estimate called Tangier a focal point for North African nationalist activity and a headquarters for exiled nationalists, showing that the supposedly neutral city had become politically consequential precisely because no single protectorate fully enclosed it. France exiled Mohammed V in August 1953, but resistance strengthened, and when he returned in November 1955, his restoration signaled that the protectorate system was nearing its end rather than that colonial authority had recovered. Independence came in stages during 1956. France ended its protectorate in March, Spain ended its northern protectorate in April, and during July the international administrator was replaced by a Moroccan governor while the police passed under Moroccan authority. On 29 October 1956, an agreement ended Tangier's international status and restored Morocco's full exercise of sovereignty, leaving international institutions only briefly for transition and some economic privileges until 1960, as nominal recognition finally became direct Moroccan government.